Hey guys, today I wanted to chat about one of the most brutally effective workout routines that I've ever tried. And I keep returning to it over the years as it's like a little framework that I can return to that I bolt on all of my strength routine stuff. And so I'm, of course, speaking about the 20 rep squat routine. And it has not only been brutally effective for me, but it has a great history of being effective for many, many people with or without steroids. So let's chat a little bit about where it all started. So apparently it all started in the 1930s with a guy called J.C. Hayes, and he believed in heavy squats for high repetitions followed by breathing pullovers. Now, this was taken to heart by a guy called Perry Radar, who was the editor, I think, the editor in chief of Iron Man magazine. And he was quite a skinny fella himself, and he put on quite a lot of muscle just using the 20 rep squat routine. And obviously, there were more exercises involved than just the squats themselves. There were the breathing pullovers, probably some form of pushing overhead or pulling from the floor, something really basic, I'm sure, back in the 1930s. But all of that sort of died down, and you had this sort of the Bronze era bodybuilders and the Silver era, which was sort of 1950s, and up to the Golden era, which was the likes of Schwarzenegger and Robbie Robinson and a few of those past greats. So if you're finding this video helpful, then please hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. And just remember that leg press is no substitute for proper squatting. But one of the famous guys who's on the thumbnail is Reg Park, and he was a British guy from Leeds, and he was around in the 1950s, probably not before the steroid era, but he was over 6 foot and had an amazing, imposing physique. And he's really well known for a 5x5 programming, so 5 sets of 5 reps. But it's also known that he was a proponent of the 20 rep squat routine as well, and may have put some foundational work in on those in his early days. Now, that brings us up to when I started training, which is probably the late 80s and early 90s. And all of this sort of furore about the 20 rep squat routine had died down, and it was kind of one of these forgotten magical training routines that was brought back into prominence by two writers mainly, I think. One of them was Randall J. Strassen, and he wrote a book called Super Squats, which promised 30 pounds of muscle in 30 days or some ridiculous claim like that. And then there was a guy called Stuart McRobert who wrote a book called Brawn, and he also independently published a magazine in Cyprus, I think it was, which I heard about and bought and had it shipped over to Ireland in the late 80s. And I want to get all excited about the magazine, but he published it independently, although he wrote for magazines like Flex back in the time and also Iron Man. He had this little small, it was almost like the size of a Reader's Digest in terms of dimensions, not quite that thick, and it was filled with alternative training methods which were pure magic to people like me who struggled with the conventional sort of 3 sets of 10 rubbish that was trotted out in the magazines of the time, like Muscle and Fitness and Flex. And these magazines would just be full of rubbish routines of champions saying that they worked on this routine and it built their amazing delts or built their amazing chest or legs, when in actual fact it was probably written by a ghostwriter, and this so-called champion had never seen it, never done it, and never had any success with it. But these little magazines that Stuart McRobert printed were full of training nuggets and gems from people who had tried alternative training methods. It was called The Hard Gainer. Sorry, the magazine was called The Hard Gainer. And it was full of information. And it was based on the premise that most people were probably overtraining or doing too many sets, too many movements, too many exercises over too many days, following some sort of split program that was promoted by a champion, that was stuffed to the gills on performance enhancing chemicals, shall we say, and probably there was enough volume in these programs to kill a horse. And so dialing back some of the extraneous or superfluous volume, superfluous movements, and the things that were unnecessary, this drilled down to the core of what was actually useful. And these two books, the Super Squats and Brawn, were also packed full of really useful information. And they just dial down into what was actually useful and productive for the average person going to the gym. And if you were going to the gym 3 times a week, you didn't have 3 different routines and a split and then push, pull legs or upper body, lower body, and all of this sort of confusing sort of 20 sets per body part stuff. It was 3 days and the routine was exactly the same. And also, we're all kind of used to double progression. So say, for instance, you have an exercise like bench press and you work from the rep range 8 to 12. So you start off at a weight, 8 reps. As soon as you can do some more reps, you keep ramping up the reps until you get to 12. And then you pop some more weights on and you bring back the reps down to 8 and you start the whole process again. So this progression scheme that was advocated in these books would probably do away with that style of double progression and just simply use, every time you came to the gym, you put the smallest, tiniest, weeniest weight on the bar, an extra weight. So with squats, you would get some half pound plates or half kilo plates, and you would add them every time you squatted. And I remember this being massively successful for me. I think I started off with 60 kilos, so 1 plate, and I would add weight every time I squatted. And over the course of about 2 or 3 years, I ended up squatting 140 kilos for 20 reps. And I would do this on a regular basis. That was in my 20s. 140 kilos now would probably kill me. And in fact, 130 kilos for triples is quite a feat for me these days. But nonetheless, every now and again, I return to doing the 20 rep squats, and I will use something like 100 kilos or a little bit more just to get that feeling and put that sort of framework of that old magical routine back into operation. Clearly, it needed more than just squats. So most of the routines were promoted with with breathing pullovers, with the idea to expand your rib cage. Whether that worked or not, I'm not entirely sure. You just have an anatomical frame that you're born with, and it's very hard to, once you're fully grown, to develop wider clavicles or change the insertions and origins of your muscles. So that kind of nonsense aside, it would be paired with some real sensible overhead presses, some pull-ups, some bench presses, and probably some Romanian deadlifts as well. And these programs were massively effective for me. I remember having to buy trousers and have them altered, stick a little triangle in the inner thigh because my legs were so big compared to the trousers that waist size that I could fit into. So anyway, just wrapping up this is one of my favorite programs. I highly recommend it, and I recommend that you check out those 2 books, the Super Squats by Randall J. Strossen and also Brawn by Stuart McRobert. He's written tons of books since then, but go back to the original source materials if you can source them and find them. They're well worth a read. And don't be fooled by the simplicity of the routines. Everybody wants to have these complicated routines that, fill up spreadsheets. But, some of the most simple routines that I've done have been absolutely killers and the most effective things that I've ever tried.